And we need to add you're Grenadian when you're late. So you have to add that part to it as well. I'm gonna need Buddy and Squeeze that to go back to the studio and add that piece. You're Grenadian because sometimes we're late. Well, a lot of the times. But nonetheless, good morning, everybody. I have to extend my apologies once again. And of course, the Prime Minister will be given the opportunity to do the same. It is not my fault. The Prime Minister is late this morning, but I'm sure it was for a good cause because he's always busy. After all, he's the Prime Minister. So, welcome everybody. Good morning to you if you're viewing us live on YouTube and Facebook. And if you're listening to us via radio, it is a pleasure to have you here for this special edition of the Ladies' Room. And like we told you before, we will be speaking with the Honorable Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell. So we will, yes, have an extended version this morning to make up for some of the time that we lost. All right. And of course, we're going to try to at least get a lot of information out of the Prime Minister within the time that we have in studio this morning. So as soon as you come on the live, just do us a favor and share and give other folks the opportunity to be part of the conversation this morning. And of course, you know that's what we do. It's not an interview. It's a conversation that we'll be having with our Honorable Prime Minister in studio right about now. So without further ado, we are gonna get right into it. So once again, good morning, Honorable Prime Minister. How are you today?
Good morning. I am doing well, and let me right off the bat apologize to you and to your viewers and listeners for my late arrival. I am sometimes guilty of being too ambitious and try to pack too many things into a short space of time. So I couldn't escape a briefing. I am incoming chair of CARICOM, and we are planning for hosting CARICOM heads and the 47th regional meeting and the 3rd and 5th. So unavoidably delayed. But my apologies, and I hope I can make up for that.
I think you will, without any doubt. So we have, like I said, quite a bit to pack into this segment. So we are going to jump right into it. Can you please just adjust the mic? I think it's a bit low on my end. We want to make sure you guys hear us loud and clear.
All right.
Yeah,
better?
Much better. All right. So there's so many that falls under your umbrella as Prime Minister, and of course, you're with the responsibilities for infrastructure and not forgetting national security and all of that. And we want to sort of, put everything within this segment. But before we get to that, how are you? How have you been? It's exactly a year since we've sat and have a conversation. So how have you been?
I've been good. Thankfully, no health issues. I think my blood pressure is still like that of a baby. I did do one test at sort of impromptu, and I had to recheck it the next morning to make sure it wasn't me and it was the equipment. I think it was the equipment. The person knows.
Well, it was good.
I'm teasing them, but no, it was good. So yeah, I think for me, once I'm healthy and my energy level is good, then I'm good. So far so good.
So far so good. Fantastic. Now, 2 years, like I said, a year ago, we sat here and had the same conversation. Well, it's going to be a different conversation, but we basically focused on your first term, your first year in office. And this morning we'll do the same. This time it'll be year 2. But I want to start off differently. Now, you've been a teacher, of course, right? And you've had the responsibility of grading your students, etc. Now, in holding the position of Prime Minister, as a past teacher, if you were to grade your administration's second year in office, out of 10, what score would you give them? Honestly, what score would you give to them out of 10?
Wow, you're definitely bowling a bouncer right off.
We're not wasting time.
I would probably say 7. Yeah, I would say 7. I'm a hard task master, so I would say 7.
That's fair enough. Why would you say 7?
Well, I think there's some things, the challenge is implementation, and that challenge still remains. So I think we have to work better at making sure that we understand what are the challenges with implementing and making sure that we're very focused on doing so. And I think that's really the main issue. And then I think for all of us, it's a learning curve as well. Recall, none of us have been in this position before, and I think we have to find the right balance between governance and politics, because ultimately you are elected to represent people, And in Grenada and to some extent in the Caribbean, there's a certain brand of politics that our people want and expect, and it may take time to change it, but obviously politics is a very personalized thing. And therefore, as members of parliament, so it's not just a question of the government per se, but as MPs, as representatives, people want to feel that there is access to you, that they can share their concerns, share their views, and it's not always easy to find that balance and then still have time left for family, friends, or any of that. So I think that learning curve is also something we have to deal with, and I think as we go on, the balance may shift differently. So I could certainly say, for example, I think in the first year, it was important to convey to the general public that we could run the government, that we knew what we were about despite inexperience, and to create the sense of assurance, the sense of confidence, because you would appreciate that others were suggesting otherwise. And so I think now that 2 years has passed, and we sort of about to enter our third year, it's important to make sure that we are reconnecting with our people, that we are trying to serve their needs and addressing a lot of the issues that are matter to them in their constituency. So I think in that sense, I would expect certainly as we go into third year, that you will see a lot more what I would call hands-on, in a sense, representation of people within the constituencies. So, in a sense, that's part of the reason for the seven.
For the seven. Okay, that's fair enough. Now, I want to take a minute to look back and reflect on some of the successes, because with everything else, there are successes. There's good, bad, uglies. So I want to start off looking at some of the successes of your administration for the last 2 years, some that, you would like to highlight.
Wow, there's a lot of them, but I think I can perhaps focus on workers and education. I think when we got into office, there was clearly a lot of issues in terms of industrial relations, in terms of morale within the public service, and we went to work right away. I mean, obviously, we paid the pensions. We did so in rapid time. Within the first weeks of being in office, we met with the unions. We recommitted to doing so, and then we put the plans in place to make sure that happened. So by November of 2022, we'd in fact paid $75.1 million in pensions, arrears and back pay to public workers. And that's critical, and that's just one component of it. We are currently working on hoping to take legislation to Parliament by October to treat with the other group of government workers, as many as close to 3,500 to 4,000 of them, who currently do not have any pension, except the NIS pension, and in some instances even that they don't have because they were contracted in such a way that the government was not paying NIS for them at all. And they were being told to pay their own NIS, when in fact they were not self-employed persons. And so we are looking to address that situation by creating a new pension plan for them as well. So I think that is critical. We, I think, demonstrated to our teachers that we were not here to fight with them, that we respected them, we appreciated them. Even though this was not a campaign promise, we repaid the doc salaries. We were able to, in record time, enter into collective bargaining agreements with all unions representing public workers, prisons, police, doctors, nurses, teachers, mainstream public servants, where cumulatively we agreed on salary increases and fringe benefits for a 3-year period. We have been able to address the minimum wage, something which should be adjusted or at least revised every 3 years. It hadn't been done in over a decade. Last time it was done was by a prior NDC administration, so we were able to engage in extensive consultations, and we were able to do so. And in keeping with the recommendations coming out of the minimum wage, we've been able to address Imani trainees. Now they call trainees, but you can't train for 10 years to be a teacher. And we have a lot of that that we've inherited. And so we've, as a first step, increased the minimum wages for them. And so they too are benefiting from the $1,200 per month minimum payment that the minimum wage has recommended. We had a major issue at TAMCC involving retroactive payments that had not been made, even though in principle they had been agreed. And we were able to resolve those matters with the lecturers and support staff at TAMCC, again, in the several of millions of dollars, and we were able to do so. So we think from an industrial relations perspective, from how we view workers, there are lots of persons who really are the backbone of Grenada, the cooks in the schools. They've been paid very low salaries. They don't have pensions, and when they retire, the gratuity they get, the small sums they get in many instances is $200 or $300. We, as part of the negotiations with the unions, were able to increase that sum to a minimum of $500. The minimum wage would also now apply to them, so they've gotten significant increases in their salaries as well. So we've really spent a lot of time trying to assure our workers of the nation that we appreciate that without people who work, there is no nation. You can't build a country if people are not prepared to work, and we are in this together. So it's not them against us. We always appreciate that as a worker, you want more money, and if it's affordable, if it's doable, we certainly will aim to do so. But we also have to emphasize the need for productivity, punctuality, the need for customer service, the need to
Which is a serious problem.
right, the need to make sure that we view our citizens in the appropriate manner, because they're the one paying the taxes. It's the citizens who pay your salaries, not me. And so we have to ensure that within the public service as well, that we really professionalize the public service, that we can motivate people, that customer service means something, that serving the public is important. It's gratifying to help someone. You know, it's not just about the pay. It's if someone comes in on a tax issue or education issue, looking for help with a scholarship, it's nice to be able to guide them and to help them achieve what it is they want. So we have to make sure we encourage that culture within the public service, and that it doesn't always have to be antagonistic. And if we do have a difference of view or policy, that we find respectful ways in which we can try and bridge the gap. So I think even the way in which we conducted the union negotiations, I think even the union leaders themselves are commended for that, because we came from a place of saying we are equals. We are here to try and find an appropriate solution to a challenge that we both have. How do we ensure that workers get paid equally, fairly, and how do we at the same time keep industrial peace? And so I think the Ministry of Labour, the Labour Department, the negotiating team from the government, led by Mr. Bernard Antoine, did a really good job. And we want to continue along that road. So I would say on the industrial relations front, on how we view workers, how we support and encourage workers, that to me, without question, has been a major highlight that we're proud of. And then the second area I would quickly highlight would be education. I was at a meeting earlier this morning, and I re-emphasize the fact that when people talk about salaries and money and income and so on, really you're talking about investing in yourself. And I gave the example of saying, a lot of our young men, if they leave school with no skills and they are not looking for an administrative job or a traditional professional job, if we don't equip them, for example, to be able to enter, say, the construction industry at a particular skill set, then they go in as helpers. So they get the hardest work to do, and they get the lowest wages. And the construction industry is such that you don't have a lot of dedicated training time, because it's a project, you have to start and you have to end, and you have to end within budget. And so what you have is a situation where we have created an education system where we are basically putting people out to be helpless.
Yes.
And so they're going to be taken advantage of. They're going to get low wages. That's why youth poverty, if you look at who are the poorest people in the society, it's the youthful population. And so we have to ensure that people appreciate that there's a direct relationship between wealth and education. And I don't mean academic education. I mean education that actually allows you to function within the society. So we've embraced a recognition that there are a number of things we need to do, which is to make sure that as much as possible, each citizen, and in particular the poor citizens of the country, have access to education. And so that's why at TAMCC and at for example, we've said no tuition fees, because we cannot value a citizen by reference to $500 or $600 or $700 or $800 worth of tuition fees. And so we know for a fact that it's begun to work, because the numbers, for example, at NULO have increased significantly to the point where they asked for additional government support in hiring 4 teachers. We've also increased the subvention we have to NULO from by an extra $25,000 per month. So it used to be 75, we've made 100,000. Right, so essentially means per year you're getting $1.2 million from the government to NULO, in addition to the fact that students don't have to pay tuition. We very early o'clock removed all of the various, they may seem small, but it matters, because you see, if a parent has 2 or 3 children, it adds up, the registration fees, the this, the that. And again, it could serve as a barrier to children going to school.
It's a start.
Right, so we removed that. The school feeding program. Now it may be $1, it may be 3, but if you have 3 kids, it's $9 every day, it's 9 by 5. So again, we've said, let us ensure that at least each child in our primary schools have access to a free meal, even if it's 1 meal per day. So again, we are looking to target persons who otherwise would be vulnerable and who may likely be at risk to not wanting to go to school or being unable to go to school because the parents may not be able to afford. We've continued with some of the policies that would have been in place when it comes to things like uniform assistance, because some parents can't afford uniforms. So again, every August, every September, as school reopens, parents and students benefit from having access to programs like these, which are targeted at ensuring that our students have access. So we've worked on the access issue. From a greater policy initiative, one of our goals ultimately is to ensure that each household in Grenada has a university graduate. Right. So we are reviewing how we can begin to start accomplishing those things. We are going to just this week, the cabinet approved a signing agreement, for example, with Monroe College out of the United States to see how we can give more access again to our citizens to be able to obtain a first degree. So education is key. One of the key things that we have to do is make sure that we can diversify the curriculum and make sure that we tailor it more to the needs of the society. So things like the creatives, music in school, taking sports as a career. These are all things. That's why you see we're fixing so many of the playing fields. We intend to roll out resurfacing and redoing all of the basketball courts, all of the netball courts. The team at MIT and the MPs for the constituencies will be working on those things, because education is not just academic education. It's sports, it's music, it's technical and vocational education, it's digital skills. Those are vital and critical. So we are looking to mainstream technical and vocational education. It shouldn't be a case where you get academic education for 16 years and then we discover you're not really interested in academic education. And now at 16, we're now trying to start with technical and vocational skills. We would have missed
and
the
you
boat.
basically, it's like starting all over again.
And you're starting all over again. So we have to make sure that from a primary school perspective, and we have to make sure that we don't devalue things that are of tremendous value. Technical and vocational education, in my view, is more, in our societies, more valuable than a lot of the academic education.
But for years, we've put more attention on the education
academic,
part,
yeah.
the academic part of it.
And with the internet, a lot of the academic education, respectfully, is easily and freely available, and we really don't need to spend our time in school reading stuff that you could easily just go and research online. But the technical education, where you actually need technique and you need to understand the science and the theory behind things, just how materials behave, for example. Those are things that actually require laboratory, that requires experiment, that requires playing. And to me, education system should really be a lot more on that. And then the other aspect of education that has to be addressed, and we're beginning to do so, is in fact recognizing that soft skills are vital, because you're dealing with a human being, not a machine. So how we resolve conflict, how we recognize when we're getting stressed or not stressed, how we engage communication and working together. And that's one of the challenges with our education system. It is highly competitive. And so it encourages selfishness. But the challenge is that when you go out in the world, the likelihood that you will find a job where you're alone doing it and you don't have to interact or play or have teamwork is just, that's not real. So one of the things we have to ensure is that within our education system, there's a lot more cooperation, a lot more teamwork. And then people recognize that their success is the success of others and not just a competitive situation. And that's why you see we have so much certification going on. But then with all of the certificates, you come out from school and you can't function because you may have 15, 16 various subjects. But can you change a light bulb? Do you understand how plumbing works? How if there's a leaking toilet, how you switch the water off? I mean, those are things we take for granted, but you'd be amazed.
It's the life skills a lot of people
that
don't know.
A lot of these life skills just simply don't exist. Teaching our children to swim and ensuring to a point where you could almost say swimming is mandatory because it's a life skill that you need. So I think those are key, I think, to beginning to transform. And then digital skills. I mean, if we don't have a very deliberate digital skills policy, we will get left behind. And that's one of the things that we are keen to do. So in July, we'll be launching a cybersecurity pilot program where we intend to train 100 Grenadians in cybersecurity. And the catch here is that the suppliers essentially guaranteeing you over a 12-month period that you will find immediate employment. We're told, and we've done some research, that there are 3.5 million unfulfilled cybersecurity jobs worldwide. And the beauty of this is with internet and with the computer, you don't need to leave Grenada. And we're told the starting salaries range anyway from 2,500 US per month, all the way up to much larger numbers. And if you make 2,500 US per month, you are immediately in the tax category in Grenada, right? And many of us come into the workforce and spend 20, 30 years, and we don't get into the income tax category because our salaries are so low. So I'm saying all of this to say that the direct link between education and income is one of the things that we recognize, and we have to really make sure that our students understand that. But it will take time because, inertia, change is something that we have to work on. But we are really keen to make sure that we stay focused on education, and that we say to our people, you need to invest in yourself, because by investing in yourself, you are giving yourself the opportunity to have greater income and to be a a better contributing member of society.
Well, you're definitely on top of the ball with all the traveling, according to John Public, you're doing. You seem to be your favorite of what's happening within your government, and you're just not just racking up flying miles for flying miles' sake.
Well, I'll give an example. When I fly, it's with very specific and deliberate purpose. This cybersecurity pilot that I'm talking to you about, I went to Canada in February as part of Grenada's independence celebration. I literally flew in for one day. I flew in the night we had the event, and I flew out the morning. But within that time period, I had the honor of meeting the Minister for International Development and Cooperation out of Canada, who referred me to someone, who in turn referred me to someone. And as a result, we have the cybersecurity pilot. And that is what we do. When we fly, we are flying for very deliberate reasons to ensure that we bring back to our citizens the opportunities that we need. So there's something else that I think we have to appreciate. We're coming out of a situation where the world was closed. And we went through a pretty tough time with COVID. And to some extent, we're still re-emerging from this. And for a small island like Grenada, we have to be very deliberate and planned in terms of our international relations and where we go to seek assistance, where we go to seek help, because we're living in a very unstable geopolitical world. And we can't assume that because these people have always supported us or been traditional, that they will remain. Their interests may switch. They may have other issues to deal with. So let's take Africa, for example. We had the Ghanaian president visit us for our 50th anniversary of independence. And I had the good fortune of being invited to go to Ghana for a FinTech summit. Now, this is a financial technology summit. What we may not be aware of is that Africa is leading the world in financial technology. Kenya, Ghana. And what does that mean for the citizens of these countries? We can take women vendors, for example, who hitherto would have to basically stand in a market and hope someone buys. With their phone and with the fintech that has been developed in Kenya, they can take a picture of their products online, show it to the world, show it to Ghana. Someone can pay using their phones directly to them. They don't have to leave where they are. And they can then get the mobile person to deliver that good to them. I experienced this firsthand. Someone wanted to buy me a pair of kente socks, which is sort of the traditional cloth of Ghana. And they stood in the hotel and said, you know, if you had to go get that socks, you'd have to go downtown, Accra. That's an hour and a half in traffic. But on the phone, they said, pick what you want. I picked, they clicked, the money was sent, the socks was delivered. This is revolutionizing commerce and empowering the poorest in Africa. We face a similar challenge in our system. Many of our citizens are unbanked. They're unbanked because opening a bank account is extremely difficult in the OECS and Caribbean for a variety of reasons, most of which are related to anti-money laundering issues, anti-terrorist financing issues. We know we're not laundering money. We know we're not terrorists, but we suffer from these challenges. So what you have, as I've said, if you're a fisherman here and you live at home and you go to open a bank account, what do they ask you for? Proof of address. Well, you're living in your mother's house. They're asking you for prior statements or utility bills. None of this is in your name. So if you're 20 years old, you don't own any property, so you're living at your parents' home. You probably don't have a bank account before because now you can't open one until you're 18. You don't have a utility bill in your name. By the time they put you through the street, you already give up. And you lose hope. So what happens then? You have to operate on a cash basis. You operate in cash, you're less likely to save. So you have no bank account, you have no savings. If you don't have no savings, you have no investing, you have no planning. And essentially, it's the beginning of your impoverishment. So you say, okay, you buy a car perhaps, because a man might take 10,000 or 15,000 in cash. You buy the car, you have to pay insurance, you have to buy gas. All your money goes into essentially maintaining liability. And you wake up 15 years later and you're like, what happened to me? People underestimate the importance of being able to have access to banks. But with financial technology, you could basically bypass all of this. So when you travel to a place like Ghana and you're in a fintech, you see hundreds of young men and women who've been able to completely change their lives around and the fortunes of their communities and their villages by investing and developing apps that we can use on our phones to pay for things, to buy things, to market, to monetize, to commercialize. That's why we travel, right?
It's always better to foster, you foster better relationships in person than via phone or online. You get to see the person, you have a better feel of the person, you understand their mood, their energy, and you tend to gel better,
Absolutely.
during that time than just having a conversation over the phone. But bearing in mind that the business of the country, and you are, of course, the head of our country in terms of what's going on. It is your responsibility, and if there's somebody else you choose to delegate to represent you, then I guess you have to do what you have to do, right?
No, absolutely. And I think we have to appreciate that Grenada is a very small island, and we're part of the international community. And if you're not at the table, you have no say and you get nothing. You don't even get the crumbs. That's part of the reality. A lot of what happens in terms of financing, multilateral financing, if there are people who are not representing the country, you simply don't get anything. And we have to appreciate here that our economies are small. We're largely tourist dependent. So if we don't find alternative ways to begin to attract investment, and you can't attract investment if nobody knows about Grenada, if you're unable to market Grenada. And so we have to appreciate that. And I've singled out Africa specifically because Africa has been painted in a particular way in the West. And it's not the case. And sometimes the only way to really appreciate that is to go there yourself. So there are very, very successful stories. Business, banking, fintech. Let's take Afrobeats. It's probably it's the most dominant genre, right? And we have to appreciate the natural link between our creatives and the creatives in Africa, and give an opportunity for our culture people and so on to learn, to interact, to engage with them and to learn from them. So I will say this, and then finally, people have to appreciate that the way technology works is that you don't need to be physically in a place to work, right? And so it's important for us to appreciate that, for one, we only travel if we have to. And to a large extent, unless it's to multilateral or other areas where we are obligated to attend, and so we may have to fund the trips. The government's policy when it comes to travel as well is that if it's not funded by who's inviting us, we don't go. It's that simple.
Makes sense.
So, but there are instances where you have to go because it's in your interest to be there. But at the end of the day, we only travel when it's necessary, and we can certainly point to the success of why we travel.
Gotcha. I want to come back home a little bit to speak on the mass regularization. Of course, heard you in a couple of interviews speaking on it, and nurses, public servants, etc., had the notion that everybody across the board would be regularized. Speak to us now on the current situation.
All right. So the public service is a complex labor net of various pieces. So we met a situation where you have what I would call traditional public servants. These are public servants where they are very specific offices, they're very specific grades, in a very hierarchical structure, ranging from a permanent secretary to perhaps a clerk one or a typist or even a driver, right? And these are what I would call actual offices. And these are the officers who the law, based on the Constitution and the pension legislation going all the way back to 1958, are entitled to a government pension, and I will literally use the word office holders, and they are regulated by the Public Service Commission. These officers, their main gripe would have been the fact that many of them are put in acting positions, and they continue to act for prolonged periods of time, and the government had refused to pay their pensions. So we've paid the pensions. And we have taken the position that the regularization starts with acting. Because you see, the challenge here is, let's say you are clerk 1, and you've been asked to act in clerk 2. It means your substantive post is clerk 1, so you have that post, you're acting in clerk 2. So the person who now comes to work as clerk 1 is also now going to be made to act as clerk 1 because you are actually the substantive. And so you have a ripple effect. So you can't regularize without first addressing the acting people, because the guy who's acting in grade 2, his substantive post is grade 1. So effectively, he's blocking the guy in grade 1 from being confirmed. And that is the system they sort of created. And then by having people act, I think there are all kinds of disadvantages. I was being told even up to late evening that if you take a certain amount of leave, then you lose the allowance you would get for acting and all kinds of crazy stuff. So the first step was to say, look, those people who have been acting and who are good at the job should be confirmed. Because by doing so, you can then free up space for the next set of people who've been acting to be confirmed. Right? And that is an ongoing basis. But it does require some review and some assessment of performance and capacity and fit. If you just simply do that across the board, you may very well be confirming people who are not working, as in not productive, not fit for the job. And so that process is ongoing. So that's in a sense, the step one. The second step is that you have a large group of persons who are on contract. So in effect, they created two public services. You had the traditional one that I've talked about, and then you have the second group of persons who've been issued any various forms of engagements. And there's another group of people that are called unestablished. So in effect,
What's unestablished?
but I suppose it's meant to contraindicate or distinguish them from the established workers. And the established ones, I will say, are those that are protected. They have
That
the
makes
rights.
no
They have the
sense. You're doing
pension.
a job, right?
You're doing a job, but that's what we meant, right? And then on top of that, you have people who are on contract of service and contract for service. So let me show you
Isn't
some
that
of
a
the.
ball of confusion?
It's another ball of confusion. So let me show you some of the nuances that were created. So off service means they will treat you as if you're an employee, but you have a 1-year contract, and every year they renew it and they renew it. And they will probably, if you're off service, deduct the sums and make a contribution to you for NIS. But if you're for service, even though you're doing the exact same job, they tell you, well, you're a contractor. It's like you're an independent contractor, and therefore we're paying you $10, and out of the $10, you have to deduct the sums yourself and pay NIS. That's the kind of confusion we met. And then there's still these unestablished workers who just have they call it a government letter,
What do you do with a government letter?
right? That says, well, I guess you're an employee of the government, maybe as a cook or a watchman or something like that, or driver, right? And in those circumstances, again, there's no clear sense of, well, certainly you don't get pension, you don't get, in many of these instances when there were things like salary increases. So the established workers, their unions negotiate on their behalf, they get salary increases. The contract ones don't get. The unestablished ones don't get. And I'm talking in many instances here, years, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So this is the situation we met. So the reality is you have a much bigger public service. I'm saying public services, and people, one way or the other, depend on a government check. You have as much as anywhere between 8,000 to 9,000 people. And that doesn't include the manis, which is another, give or take, 1,500 people. And even within that system, we are talking here about the manis who are actually doing mainstream jobs like teaching or working in the same government office or in the immigration office or in the passport
Doing
office.
the same amount of.
And doing the same amount of work. So the challenge here is that whether the initial issue had to do with the structural adjustment program and the need to sort of hide your actual wage bill from the IMF or the World Bank and so on, it has created an enormous challenge. So the next step really is to try and actually identify the contract workers who are actually, in reality, doing the exact same work as the established workers, and get them to a point where I will call them as indefinite workers, meaning they are the government's workers. And we have to create the pension scheme that would allow them to ensure that as they continue to work in the government, when they get to the point of retirement, that they can have a pension. So that's the other aspect of what it is that we are working with as well. And this is critical because you see, when the pension laws were created in 1958, I think, that's almost 20 years before Grenada became an independent country. You're talking about a civil service that was a handful of people, probably a couple hundred.
Now we're talking thousands.
Now we're talking thousands. And the pension that they're entitled to, it's not funded. In other words, there's no separate government money being put aside for this pension. So every year, out of the government's general revenues that it raises from taxpayers, it actually has to pay this pension. And I want people to understand what that means. It means that if the government ever runs into trouble, or if you have a government that is unconscionable, they could simply just stop paying the pension. Or they could say, we have fiscal problems, we're not paying it. So the first set of people who will go is the pensioners, because you cannot pay the workers, because then you'd shut the country down. And in essence, if you look at what has happened over the last 40 years, that is exactly what prior governments did. They found ways to say, we're not paying this pension because we can't afford it, or it will bring the economy down because there's no actual setting aside of money to treat with this issue. And so the risk you face is that you're always vulnerable, even if there's a legal obligation to do so, because you're not actually setting aside the money and you're not investing the money so that you can grow the money so that when people reach the retirement age, they can get it. And this is what we're trying to do for all of the persons who don't have a pension at all. We are saying we are going to create a pension. We want you to contribute. The government is going to contribute. We will set this money aside in a trust fund. We can have a board of trustees where you have representatives, the government has representatives. It is regulated by GAFIN. The funds are invested so that when you retire, the government can't say, well, things tough.
So will this be from the years of service or starting from a particular date?
So the recommendation from the actuary who's looked at this is to say for persons, we are hoping to make this effective from the 1st of October, once all of the legislative engagements are in place. What the actuary has recommended, and I think the cabinet has agreed to, is that for persons obviously who've already been working, is that the government makes a contribution in recognition of their prior years of service.
Okay.
As in the government will do it. We will not ask them to do so. So we would sort of build that in to at least put some monies already in for the fact that they've already worked a number of years. So we could have had the option of saying, sorry, we met this situation, there's nothing we can do about it. But we recognize that given that people have already put in so much effort and energy that at least there should be some acknowledgement of that fact and some contribution will be made towards that fact. Yeah, and so we've budgeted for that, and we're hoping that we can get all of the necessary engine room work done so that come the 1st of October we can launch this. But I want to go further because we're starting with government workers. We also want to deal with the statutory bodies, because in statutory bodies you have in many instances a similar situation, either where there is no fund set aside, there is no investing for pensions, and so the risk is if that body ever gets into trouble, basically there is no plan B to make sure that the pensioners' money are protected. And so we want to be able to extend that to statutory bodies that either don't have a pension or have inadequate pension. And then ultimately, the goal here would be to invite, once it gets up and running, private employers who don't have pensions for their employees to be able to come along and join this as well, because we think this is crucial for the sustainability of the society. If we don't plan for retirement, if we don't plan for the day when we stop work, we're going to have major problems. We are living longer. We want better healthcare, which means even if the retirement age is moved to 65, if the average age is 77, 78, 76, you have another decade to live. And if you're not working, where are you going to get the money from? It has to come from a pension plan, from a retirement plan or savings plan. And we want to really, as a small island, ensure that all of our citizens understand that this is crucial, because what is happening is that in instances when people don't have that, they come right back to the government. And then you have all these social safety net programs that the government has to try and implement, again, coming straight out of taxpayers' money, simply because we didn't plan, we didn't put aside a rainy day fund, and we didn't invest in it. So that's part of the reason why we have to do so. So I appreciate that, for persons who are not yet regularized, that they may say, okay, this is taking too long, why is it not happening? But we have to be prudent, we have to act in a sustainable manner, and we can't deceive you. We have to be clear that ultimately, if we don't do that, then you still run the risk that when the time comes, there is no fund set aside for you to, in fact, have a retirement. And there are other advantages that I just want to quickly highlight. In the existing system, you're not entitled to that pension until you either reach the minimum years of service or whatever mandatory age. So it means, for example, if you had to do 23 years service, you can't leave at 21 because you get nothing. Literally, if you work in the government,
you work absolutely
nothing, because you're not entitled to this pension until you meet whatever the qualifying conditions are. And remember, it's not funded. So in many instances, you have people who may have prospects. You may get a job opportunity. You may want to exit the public service because they better pay. You might have gone and got a master's, better opportunities. But what's holding you back is, Jesus, I have another 3 years. If I leave now, I wouldn't get that pension.
Everything.
So in the new system, what it will allow you to is, in fact, take that pension with you. Right? And so we're building in that sort of situation. So it allows you to then basically transfer that pension and take it with wherever you're going. And we think this is important because you may very well find, from a productivity, from an interest point of view, if you've done something for 20 years and you want to move on, you want to ensure that you can move on, because that way you also give room for younger people coming up. But if you literally just hang around because all you're interested in is the pension. But then we always
complain we have, so many people in positions for so long, and you give young people a chance. We always sing the Give Young People a Chance song. So how would we give them a chance if, hey, I've got all these years, I want to make sure that I take care.
Yeah. So that's part of what we are treating with. And so we will actually give persons on the established traditional one the opportunity they want to join the new one to do so. We can't force them, because the legislation at this point in time and the Constitution says this is what they're entitled to. And in a sense, we're stuck with that. But we think there are advantages that people will begin to see, because you don't want to be locked into a situation for 20, 23 years or whatever the current rules are, which are difficult to change because of the court ruling and the Constitution, if there are other lucrative opportunities elsewhere. And so that's why we need to ensure that we give our workers that level of flexibility as well.
Okay. All right. So before we speak on a couple other things from a country's perspective, you also have your constituency of St. David to deal with. Care to report on any new developments or what has been happening for St. David under your watch?
Sure, absolutely. Sometimes I think my citizens might be...
Your entire demeanor changed when we heard St. David. We got smiles, we got listen. Okay, let's go on.
No, because, I say... Believe it or not, in my head, I'm thinking the people of St. David's are probably complaining because they don't see me enough, and so on. Obviously, because of the fact that I'm the Prime Minister. But I'm very excited to just give a brief update. In fact, tomorrow we'll be opening the current community center. In my first year, I took a very deliberate policy of trying to renovate, rebuild as many community centers as possible, because we see them as symbolic of community spirit, community initiative, and really bringing back the government to the communities, as well as our engagement with communities. As you know, we do a lot of town halls, we do a lot of engagements. So we first fixed the Bale Isle Community Center, Now, this was a building that was literally falling apart. They said it had to be demolished. Not only did we save it, we in fact created a downstairs that now serves as a storeroom and has allowed the community center to be named as a hurricane shelter. And crucially, that community center formed the logistics hub, and in a sense, the inspiration for the WASH program. Because right next to the community center, there were homes with no bathrooms, no toilets. And when I looked at the community center that had 2 bathrooms, 2 toilets, I'm like, there's no way we can walk out of this community center and then have someone literally bathing naked right next to the community center because they don't have access to water. They don't have access to an indoor bathroom. They don't have access to a toilet. So we literally built, 10 feet from the community center, the model bathroom that formed the basis for the WASH program. And the community center literally became the hub, the logistics hub for the pilot WASH program we launched in Bel Air, where we built 35 bathrooms and toilet. And we're not talking here unfinished bathrooms and toilet. We are talking fully tiled, fully painted, fully outfitted with sinks, toilets, and lights. Right? And in some instances, we had to show up the houses just to be able to do that. So the pilot has been extremely successful, and we intend to now roll this pilot out throughout the length and breadth of Grenada. And it's really a national goal, ultimately to eliminate the use of pit latrines and outdoor toilets. It's unsanitary, it's not safe, or women and children in particular, whether it's rainy, we're in the rainy season. Imagine
It's
having
elderly.
to come out in the night and leave your home and have to walk 6-10 feet, and then the stench, all of that. So it's really a national goal that I think all of us can rally around. It's not about politics, and that's why we did it this way as well. I said to the folks, we are doing everyone who we know can't afford it, who doesn't have the ability to do it, because we don't want to continue a situation that when it comes to NGOs, government resources, you pick this house and you ignore that house, because you're sowing seeds of division within the community. Community should be about all of us. So from Bel Air, we moved to places like Old Westall. That community center is under renovation. Barrett. I recall going to Barrett Pasture. Barrett is a place where a lot of cricket and so on are played by community members. The pasture itself is on a hill because it was literally leaning like that. Small community center, never renovated since Hurricane Ivan. We've completely renovated it with the help of the community. We've leveled and resurfaced the playing field, and we've built a road on the edge of the playing field so that the residents of the community who live beyond the community center don't have to drive through the pasture and destroy the same pasture that we need for community sports and environment. And we bring in WASH to Bel Air as well, because again, we want to use the community center as sort of the logistics hub and a meeting place for residents. As I said, Current, and we intend to go to a specific village called Coconuts in Current as well, where again there's a high concentration of pit latrines, and be able to roll that out. We went to Vincent's, again, old school, the property of the Catholic Church, and they were gracious enough to say you can use it. And we've built from ground up on the ruins a complete new community center that we will be commissioning shortly. In Malmont, we've done some retrofitting of the community center there, and right now there are sewing classes taking place there where persons are being taught to sew. So we took a very deliberate policy on the issue of community centers. We're looking at Windsor Forest, which also has a abandoned community center damaged from since Hurricane Ivan, never repaired. So we're talking 20 years here. And the idea is to say, first and foremost, this is about community. It's about giving citizens an opportunity to meet, to speak, to talk about how we can help you improve and create that community effect. So we'll continue with that. The second initiative that we are going to start shortly is play pens for children in the playing fields, right? Because not everybody wants to kick a football or play cricket. Somebody may just want to swing to de-stress. A child might have had So last suggest Malmont, the same Barrett, we've identified the areas. We are grateful to be receiving some funding from the Chinese embassy, and we intend to launch that project shortly, where our seniors could go walking with their grandchildren. Mothers could take their children, fathers could take their children to just go sit on a swing, sit on a merry-go-round, sit on a slide.
Just to bring back that
just to
community
sort of bring
spirit.
back that community spirit. We've begun the renovation of the last suggest basketball court, similar to what happened in Grandlands. We intend to take that throughout the length and breadth of Grenada. We've started in St. David and in record time. And I want to make this point. We are not just coming and doing infrastructure and then leaving. We have a meeting with the community first. We give them the opportunity to have their input, their recommendations. We talk about, let's form the basketball team. Let's bring back the basketball competition. Then we renovate the court, because we have to build trust. And I don't want to, undersell this issue of trust between the governed and those who are doing the governing. Because I've recognized many times, when I tell someone I'm going to come back, They don't believe.
No, you don't.
And when I come, sometimes they're like genuinely shocked. They're like, "You actually came?" And I'm like, "Why would I not come?" And it's because of the experience that politicians in the past, many times, look at you in your face and just lie to you. They know they're not coming back. They say we'll come back, and they don't. So I'm always taken aback still when I say I'm coming and I come, and people is like, "I can't believe you came." I'm like, "Why?" And it's like, "Well, the experience is that people just don't come unless it's election time." So so the quote is almost is virtually finished in last address. And again, we do those things because we want to demonstrate to people that we are committed to fulfilling the things that we say we are trying to do. We may have obstacles, we may have challenges. But when we say, for example, we're fixing a basketball court, we fix it. And we do so in a visible way, in a transformative way, and in a way that enhances it and gives you the opportunity to have your input. So we're looking forward now to things like the basketball competitions, not just within St. David, but where teams from St. David can go to St. John, teams from St. John can come to St. David's. Because you see, if only one area has the courts, Grandlands, for example, then there's no competition.
There's no competition.
You shouldn't have to leave St. Patrick to come to Grandlands to play. It would be nice, but if you have courts in St. Patrick's, courts in St. Andrew, or young men get to interact, they get to learn from each other. They
And
get
I
to
think
share
over the years,
experiences.
the lack of maintenance sort of caused people not to, because growing up, I knew Grenville always had basketball competitions when they had the court first at the market and then the bus terminal, and then that was no more. So it sort of died down in terms of the interest. St. Patrick always had, basketball competitions, and then you merged the different parishes and you had, national basketball competitions. So it'd be nice to see something like that being revived to give young men, something, an outlet,
Absolutely, and we need that. And that ties in really to the whole question of social delinquency, frustration, issues of violence, conflict resolution, and so on. And that's why it's absolutely vital that we provide the facilities, but also that we're there in person. We're speaking to them, we're giving them the opportunity to engage. And even when we had that meeting in last year, I said to some of our older women to speak to them, to speak to the young men. Don't just assume because you may not, the hairstyle may not be what you approve of, or the dress may not be what you approve of, that you shouldn't engage because they're somebody's grandson, somebody's son, and you quickly find that when you engage with them, you find them charming and engaging, and you actually want to continue.
That's how they look.
Exactly. So that is crucial. So that's one of the things that we're really keen to fast track and do all of the courts. And in some instances where there are communities that don't have, to see whether we can find land to be able to build and do some of that. But I want to point out, there are lots of things I don't talk about that are still ongoing. Helping people with things like housing assistance, the SEED program which people are on, the CES program which people benefited from. On any given day, there are a number of things that we're doing to really try and facilitate some of the social safety net. Education, again, making sure that we encourage people to remain in school. The St. David's Roman Catholic Secondary School is in a terrible shape. We have managed to acquire, there were some additional lands we needed to acquire in Malmont to be able to ensure that the site is available. So the site is now available. The designs have been done. It's a Caribbean Development Bank, so there are very strict procurement processes that we need to follow in terms of advertising, in terms of the length of time that has to be advertised. But the aim is, as much as possible, to get us to the point where by next year, early next year, we're in a position where contractors are selected and we can begin to commence construction of the new school. And it's vital because the risk is if we are not able to do so, there could be issues of safety at the school, and then it may mean still finding a temporary area for the school. So that is something that is crucial. In terms of infrastructure, one of the things we are seeking to do is, and I think you can probably already see it on the roads, the approach to how we maintain our roads must change. And so the patching here and the patching here is just not on. So in some of our back roads, you could take a place like Vincent's, Windsor Forest. I mean, the entire road needs widening. All of the culverts and drains need to be addressed. So I've said to our residents, be a little patient. I appreciate it's tough on the vehicles. But if we continue patching, 2 rains will fall. We waste the material, it goes away. So the idea here would be to get to a point where we can actually combine some of the road teams as opposed to have them scattered all over the place and say, listen, we are working for 2 weeks on this road. And when we begin, there should be significant progress made when we leave so that the residents can see that there's been an actual improvement and a transformation of the road. And that is the sort of approach we want to take to a lot of our secondary roads, to make sure that if something happens on the main road, that the roads can actually accommodate 2 vehicles. In some instances, they may require major engineering where the bridges and so on are too narrow. But at least if you can scrape the side, put the drains in, and then resurface the roads, that is the approach we want to take. And we really do believe we can do it. I'm giving the example of the Trouble Road now because we announced that we were going to renovate the Trouble Road. This is a road that has not been resurfaced since 1969, I'm told, since Sir Eric Gary had Expo,
Wow.
right? And we are announced we are going to do it. We have added impetus because we have the CARICOM heads of government meeting opening ceremony there. But we're going to do the entire road. We're not going to do, oftentimes you've seen the past where someone will fix the length of road
And then the
up to
rest.
someone's house and then leave the rest. So it is not going to be from the entrance to True Blue to SGU and then you leave the citizens of True Blue and the businesses there not having good road. So they've mobilized, the contractors are there. We are going to do the entire road one time so that when they leave, the road is fixed. You can then move to another site. So I just give this as an example because infrastructure in St. David's is also a major issue. It's a pretty large parish with a lot of secondary roads. And we want to make sure that we're able to do so as well. And that's the approach we want to take. We want to be systematic and we want to be planned. So people can measure whether we've done the things we said we we're going to do. So we say we're doing community centers, you can identify the 6 or 7 of them. We're improving our playing fields, you can identify them. We are doing playpens for kids, you can identify them. I want to just end on last are just natural works. This is the historic site. And it was leased by the former administration to someone who had a restaurant and then it sort of fell into disrepair and it was just locked up. We've repossessed it and we intend to restore it as well as to create a market for the citizens of St. David. Because as it stands right now, from the market square in St. George's to the market square in Grenville, whether you go through the St. Paul's Penmouth Road or whether you go through the Westall Calavini Main Road, there is no market.
There's no market.
And that is what is driving a lot of the roadside vending that is occurring. So we need to be able to create the market so that we can create that foot traffic that allows our vendors or suppliers and the people who need to buy to be in a place where you've got electricity, you've got refrigeration, you've got some shelter from the elements, where you got bathroom,
right
toilets.
on the main road, so it's a
exactly.
good location.
So the team at the ministry has already started doing conceptual designs. We're hoping to really accelerate that process as quickly as possible because you have 2 major hotels, one that is already open, one that is under construction and is likely to open in the next 18 to 24 months. And we want the tourists to be able to leave the hotel and go to a place where there is access to local produce, local arts, craft, a local rum shop, a local oil lung, so that they could really truly experience St. David. So we're looking at doing this, but we also want to preserve the historic facade of the building and to be able to create a space where you can go back to having weddings, where you can have a proper restaurant, where you can have outdoor events, and where you can have a museum that features the art and craft and the history and the culture of not just St. David, but Grenada. We think it's a beautiful space for doing so. So that's really one of the marquee things that we really want to be able to accomplish. And so I'm excited about this. I'm eager to get it going. And the market issue is not just for St. David. The south of the island has a major challenge as well because you see there are vendors all over doing that. So that's another plan we're looking at for the south of the island. And then for the Calavini Westall area as well, you see there are lots of people there from the Egmont Gap to the Confer Gap. We're looking at the site next to SOG as a possible site that we can create a market there for people to be in. Again, it's next to a supermarket. It's on the main road instead of everybody along the road.
Now
So
you mentioned the hotels in St. David, Six Senses, etc. How would you say that has added to St. David? Seeing that all the years we've known the south of the island to be, the major tourism belt. Now taking that to the St. David side of it, your thoughts on it in other parts of the island?
I think the island is leaning east. No, absolutely. It's without question, it's transformative because it's essentially been a peninsula that has simply just been in its natural state. So you're talking about significant economic activity. And when the intercontinental comes on, again, you literally doubling capacity. So I expect we will continue to see significant growth. You have the affordable homes that are in current, which was generously built and donated by the government and people of China. These units are approximately 200. So even if it was 1 person per unit, you're talking about an additional 200, but we know it's not. It's likely to be 3 and 4. So you're talking families here where in the next 18 months or so, we're looking at an increase in capacity of probably 600 or 400 people moving into just that village alone. And hence the reason why you need things like the market, because where are you going to get the food from? Where are you getting fruits from? Where are you getting vegetables, meat, fish, right? And that's one of the things that is important, I think, for us to appreciate is that as communities grow and expand, we have to cater for the needs. So even things like schooling, you've got the current government school, but will that school be adequate to absorb the people moving in there? Now, some of the kids may be going to St. George's or maybe going to St. Andrew, but you need to factor that in. And that's why we need to have play areas for kids. That's why we need to make sure that our playing fields are maintained, because you want to ensure that families who live in that community can find an avenues to express themselves. as well as to just, exposure. It's crucial because I think, in a sense, we need to make sure our young people have exposure to the world. And so having something like an international branded hotel, an Intercontinental or Six Senses there, gives them the opportunity to meet people, to meet tourists, people from all over the world, to speak, to hear from them about their experiences, how they became successful, what they love about Grenada. What would make you leave Europe or North America to come to Grenada so that we can appreciate our country a little more. Because if someone is prepared to fly halfway around the world, to come to Lasajas, to enjoy our beach, to breathe our air, because of the peaceful nature of it, we have to appreciate how special and how lucky we are. And I give you this example. I was in the presence of the governor of Lagos, who was in Grenada. And I saw him standing, taking very deep breaths. And I thought something was wrong with him. I'm like, "Are you okay, sir?" He's like, "I'm very fine." I'm like, "Why?" It's like, "You don't appreciate how clean this air is and how I'm trying to fill my lungs with every bit of it before I go back to Lagos." Because Lagos is a vibrant, thriving city, but the air pollution is a major challenge. And so here we had someone essentially just valuing the air that we breathe. And these are things we take for
That's the
granted
things we take
until
for
you get
granted.
a city that is full of smog. So I think without question, it will be a catalyst for, I think, major continued transformation in Cindy.
Now, on the matter of housing, of course, we've had this conversation as well as, the low-income houses that were built by the Chinese, and of course, folks getting the opportunity to own them now. Speak to us on where we are.
Right. So the process is ongoing. I think in the case of St. David, as many as 40 persons advised by the Housing Authority have in fact moved in. We expect in the case of CARICOM, I'm told that at least 18 persons have begun to move in. And so we expect that there will be a continuous uptick. Now, of course, the process is a little different because we are saying we want you to own the units, right? We want this to be yours. We want to give you the opportunity really to own your bit of Grenada. And we think this is important to encourage home ownership. It's important to encourage investment, and it gives you an opportunity to be able to pass on something to your loved ones. We view them as starter homes, right? And also the opportunity, at least within the space, to create your own sense of style, your own sense of what it is you want. So, when we found the units had no cupboards, no closets. And we were like, well, we can't give that out to people like that. Because in effect, you're telling them to put their clothes on the ground, put their groceries on the ground. So we took the time to install the cupboards, to install the closets. We have an arrangement in place with some of the companies like Coats and so on, to help for persons who don't have furnishings and so on, to be able to help outfit it so that they can get a package and so on. And the aim here really is to ensure that there's dignity with the housing, right? And it's done in such a way that the Housing Authority will maintain the any structural defects or so on for the first 3 years. It's done in such a way that we can insure the building, because this is crucial. Home ownership has to come with insurance because we live in the hurricane belt. And it's done in such a way that there will be security on the compound as people go forward. So we really expect the uptick to continue. They are small, but the units are well built and the finishings are high-end. Far superior to a lot of the small wooden homes that we continue to construct for persons who are in difficult situations. So we really want to encourage persons to continue doing it. And it's an opportunity for the Housing Authority to recoup funds to allow it to build more homes for other persons in the future.
Okay. So since we're in housing, let me just tie in this one time. Over the years, it's something we've always had problems with, and I think this year is no different. And I'm speaking, of course, you being in public utilities, the issue of water and NAWASA. And I've lost count of the amount of NAWASA we don't have water calls and messages that I get. And I've experienced myself on a daily basis since the onset of this really, really bad dry season. The water shortages, the interruptions, moving forward, there has to be something to remedy this situation. We are surrounded by water.
Well, and there is. So there are 2 projects that are taking place as we speak. The first is called the G Cruise, which is funded by the German government, the Green Climate Fund, and the government of Grenada. And it's aiming at essentially significant pipe relaying throughout the length and breadth of the country, as well as encouraging rainwater harvesting. And then there's the Southern Water Project, which also aims at laying new pipes from Concord all the way down to the south of the island. We have to appreciate that water comes through the pipes, and our pipe infrastructure in many instances are very old. And so you having significant disruptions, maintenance issues, and significant loss of water. So if the infrastructure isn't repaired, we will continue with these challenges. So we certainly expect that in the next 12 to 18 months, that the physical infrastructure that NOASA has would be significantly improved, and so the ability to deliver water throughout the length and breadth of Grenada would also be significantly improved. But because we depend largely on surface water, we as citizens and the government also have to be able to, and I think the drought has, if we were asleep, has woken us up, to recognize that we need to build in water resilience. And so rainwater harvesting and ensuring that every household in Grenada has a water tank that can store water is crucial. Our citizens in CARICOM and PT Martin know this all too well. And so you see they build in cisterns and water tanks into their construction because they appreciate they don't have the luxury like Grenada. And so we need to bring that same ethos throughout the length and breadth of Grenada. So we are working with NADMA. We are going to be working with the business community. We're going to be working with the Ministry of Finance and NOASA to, in fact, create the policy, create the fiscal incentives that will allow all of our homes in Grenada ultimately to be outfitted with, as much as is possible, a water tank. So we can do the water storage so that when you have dry periods, you are less susceptible to the dependence on NOASA. The other area that we are going to have to look at, certainly as we continue in larger developments, particularly for hotels, is the use of desalination plants. Now, no doubt they're expensive, but we think if we can incentivize the use of them, what it would mean is that in periods of scarcity, NOASA will not have to worry about supplying a hotel in the middle of the dry season, which is also incidentally oftentimes the peak winter season in our source markets. And then you have to worry about competition between serving the domestic market and, say, large hotel plants. Mm-hmm. So obviously, if more hotel plants have desalination water, then they don't need to necessarily rely on NOASA's supply. So I think that is something that we also have to look at. I mean, you don't want to prevent NOASA from earning revenue, obviously, if it can supply the water, but we'd have to make sure that the supply is adequate. And then ultimately exploring new technologies. We need water for farming. So do we go back to things like creating wells? A gentleman recently, and that's the beauty of engaging in St. Andrew, I think it was either in St. Patrick or in Boca, he made the point of saying, in the past, we would create basins in the river so that the basins would actually fill up with water and you would minimize the downflow so that when the dry season comes, you actually have a reservoir of water. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, but over time, that has not been maintained. And so you end up in a situation where many times the water just simply flows out. And then you end up with the dry season where there is no catchment where the water is actually trapped. So I think, indigenous knowledge like this is useful and helpful, and it allows me then to be able to go back to the NOASAs, to the technical people today, to say, well, why aren't we creating the basins as the locals are suggesting if it used to be done in the past? Why are we not sinking wells so that we can store water? So I think there's no doubt work has to be done there. I will also finally point out, because I know many citizens complain on this issue, about the brown quality of the water that damages their clothes, etc., etc. And NOASA has explained the technical reason why that happens, but we have approved in Cabinet, and we expect legislation to come on board that would make the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission the regulator of NOASA, so that issues such as quality of water and so on could be addressed by an independent regulator, and so that customer complaints and so on could also be addressed.
Okay. I want to move a little bit now to the crime and security aspect of things. Of course, being the Minister for National Security, you've been aware of what's been going on and the firearms amnesty. And yesterday, during the sitting of the House of Representatives, where the passport and, of course, the firearms amendment bill was passed. Speak to us on that.
Right. So the firearms amendment bill seeks to significantly increase sentences for persons who breach the Firearms Act. And it's a whole list of various offenses. So all of the offenses, except one which was recently created, already existed. But the Firearms Act was first passed, I think, as way far back as 1969. And there have been few amendments, the last one being up to 1990. So in essence, for the last 2 to 3 decades, there's been no amendment to the Act. So what we seek to do is to do two things: to have minimum sentences for persons who are caught with illegal firearms, illegal ammunition, or who are caught with transshipping or trading, or commercializing illegal firearms. That's sort of the main offenses. So we're seeking to have minimum sentences, minimum fines, The maximum is always going to be determined by a judge or magistrate. And the reason for this is, I've said this, our laws should reflect our values. And we have to say, do we value life and limb or not? And it's clear that firearms are lethal. They're meant to kill. That's the sole reason they were invented, to shoot and kill, whether it's an animal or a human being. And that's not our culture. That's not our way of life. So if we recognize that we are facing a proliferation of gun-related violence, where people are being killed, where young men are killing each other, we have to make sure that we send the right value message first, and then back that up legally by saying, first, we've granted an amnesty. We said, please, for whatever reason that you might have been attracted to this, it's terrible. The proof of which is there. You see what has happened when you have a firearm. Hand the firearms in. That's the carrot. The stick is, if you don't hand the firearm in, or if you insist on continue to trying to trade or trying to buy or acquire illegal firearms, and you're caught and you're found guilty, the sentences are going to be long and they're going to be serious. And so essentially that is what the Firearms Act amendment seeks to do. And this is not an emotional issue. This is factual. And I read the data out. The police have already confiscated, and numbers would have grown because there was an operation in CARICOM which would have resulted in more confiscations between yesterday and today. Prior to that CARICOM operations, the numbers indicated is on or about 35 firearms for the first 6 months of the year. Last year we got 30. So if this trend continues, it means we've doubled, right? And when you look at the prior years, you've seen a consistent trend in the number of firearms that they've been able to intercept. 4 firearms have been turned in under the amnesty and 181 rounds of ammunition. So we are saying that this is not our culture. We can't get to St. Lucia where 17 persons were killed in one day, or Trinidad or Jamaica or the Bahamas, where shootings and so on are becoming commonplace and routine. I value my life, I value your life, and I want our young men in particular to value their lives and to value their children, because when you kill each other, they have children.
They have children, yeah.
So we're saying the tool which makes it easy to take a life has to be taken off the street as much as possible, and that's the reason. Now, the second aspect, which is the Criminal Procedure Code amendment, which also happened, and where we are saying, because we've seen it, that for firearms-related offenses, where the minimum sentence is going to be 5 years or more, when persons are arrested and charged, they may still be innocent. We are saying we do not wish for the magistrate court to be in a position to grant them bail. We want, if they do wish to have bail, for them to apply to the High Court, and the High Court will make a determination. And the reason for that is that the statistics are also showing that in many instances where people are involved in firearms trafficking or the use of illegal firearms, when they get bail, they go right back and engage in the illicit use of firearms, and in many instances engage in multiple crimes and multiple homicides. From the Bahamas come down, we see those things. And I made the point of citing, regrettably in the case of 2 of the young men who died, that one had 21 convictions. That's convictions. We ain't talking about the other times he's been arrested and the case either didn't proceed or whatever. The other one had 26. Right? And they're out. And what do?
Continue with...
Right? Somebody kills them, or it's alleged that they would have threatened to kill someone, and so someone decided, well, I'm taking you out first. So the reality is that we this is also in a sense to protect them from themselves. Because I made the argument that it is likely that perhaps if they were not on bail, that they probably would have been alive, even if they were on remand. So we have to not hide or lie or pretend that this is not a serious issue. We're talking about lives, in particular young lives, and we need to do everything. It is just one of the tools. We recognize crucially that we have to address the demand side. We have to address why someone will want a firearm, what's going on in our communities, and we have to engage. We have to find the answers. It's not going to happen overnight. It requires all hands on deck and a deliberate approach to do so. But I'm optimistic that I think Grenadians value our public safety or way of life. It's kind of what identifies and sets us apart a little from the rest of the Caribbean, and I believe we are willing to fight for this. And I think it's our job as leaders in this context to actually fight for saving the lives of our people and not accepting that the prevalence of firearms should be a culture that we should accept or tolerate.
And in so doing, the RGPF, are we equipped to deal with crime? We must say that the RGPF has done a wonderful job in solving and maintaining law and order as much as possible. They have been doing that. But we have also realized that we're dealing with a lot of either outdated systems, weapons, buildings, you name it. So in order for somebody to do their job effectively, you have to have all these things to work.
No, absolutely. And I want to, take the opportunity to single out the women and men of the RGPF for the tremendous effort that they've put in despite the trying circumstances. Some of this thing is generational in the sense that I think, fortunately, unfortunately, I'm leaving the country at a time where you're almost dealing with what I would call a 40-year period of post the fall of the revolution, 1984 to 2024. So when you look at the facilities for police, all of it, to a large extent, are outdated, right? And when we are not planning our societies, that is what happens. You wake up one day and you're like, oh my God, everything is falling apart because we didn't do the preventative maintenance, or we didn't accept that, listen, in 20 years, things are going to change, so we'll need a new building. And sometimes it's like that. If you have a building that's 100 years old, there's a certain point when you're going to say, we can't salvage this building anymore, and we need to build a new one. So from a facilities point of view, it does require a comprehensive review of all of the facilities and painting the bus while it's moving. So in the case of the police headquarters, for example, we bought, again, these are things that, we're doing in record time. We bought the floor building, we are renovating it, and the intention is to have the police headquarters, administrative headquarters, move there, and to do so before the end of the year. That also solves the issue with the tourism project on the fort. Up to late yesterday evening, I was in briefing with the senior management of the police force on the Grenville police station. We are negotiating and will finalize and get cabinet approval to rent a building in Grenville so that the police administrative arm can relocate. And we are likely going to have to demolish the Grenville police station.
Renovating, it needs to be taken
precisely. And I'm saying those are things we have to be honest about. It's not in a state that it's likely to be salvaged. The Coast Guard base, major issue. We had a fire there. It has not been dealt with. So again, construction is something that takes time because you then have to find the site. You have to plan the design. You have police stations are very specialist buildings because you have to have barracks to house the men and women. You have to have, living quarters. You have to have cells. You have to have exhibit rooms. So again, these are things that we are all inheriting where they're all crumbling or have crumbled. And it's not like you're meeting a plan. It's not like you're saying, okay, the other guys were working on it, so this is the plan, this is where they've reached. So you can take the plan and run with it. In this case, we are actually having to do the planning. So for instance, the police high command is likely to be visiting other islands and looking at model police stations. The same is going on with the prisons. Again, the prisons is hundreds of years old. A building that first was meant to house a significantly smaller number is now housing a lot larger numbers. And again, it's not like we made a plan. It's not like there's a plan that had said 10 years ago they were studying an alternative location for the prison and lands were secured and these are the plans and so on. So we have to be able to do all of that. So that's on the physical facility side. On the resources side, we are looking at modern equipment. The police has to investigate and be able to get access to phones when they're locked. You'd be amazed at the amount of crime or evidence that is stored on a phone. If you don't have the equipment to do it, it can't. So we've approved the purchase of the necessary equipment to be able to allow them to handle things like this. Fingerprinting, and buying modern equipment that will allow for modern fingerprinting. We've approved this, and we'll be looking to buy it. I mean, we can go on and on. It never ends. Nation building never ends. It's an ongoing process. But we are committed to resourcing the men and women within the police force as much as we can. There's a big issue that is important to police officers. It's a pay and grade issue that has been outstanding, I'm told, from since 1994. We've committed to working on this. So I want them to know we have not forgotten. Mr. Bernard Antoine and the team have to provide some briefings as to where we are. It's an issue we are going to try and certainly resolve as well within our term so that at least they don't feel, that other public servants get superior treatment to them. Prison officers. There are also issues there that we need to address. So we are also going to take the necessary measures to be able to address it as well.
Okay. I wish we could spend the entire day doing this, but I know you have other you have responsibilities and other places to be. So we'll try to sort of wrap up momentarily. But I think I got about two more questions. One of which, and I know my listeners will not forgive me if I didn't ask, but we have since seen a press release from the SMC, where they are specifically informed promoters about the period from 8 to 13th August, thereabouts, that during which they'll be permitted to feature a maximum of 2 non-national performers in their programs. Now, you being an avid Carnival lover, and of course, I know how you feel. Also, you feel about free movement and interactions and travel among the region, etc. So, 1 month before Carnival, your thoughts on how this may affect our local promoters and regional artists?
Well, I think it's always trying to find the right balance. So I think for me, I want to promote Grenada first. And so I want to give priority to Grenadian artists. And at the same time, you want to be able to encourage and accommodate the regional exchange and having regional artists here. So I will say that I'm not so sure what the consequence will be in terms of attendance. My own view is that Grenadians go to Carnival for Grenadian artists. There might have been a time when the big regional artist was the reason for going. Well, my sense is, and I say this, and I'll use my election campaign as an opportunity. I think except for the youth event in Guav, where there was a Jamaican artist, we never featured a regional or even foreign artist. I think there was one Trinidadian artist in last just at the end. And it's not that I have anything against regional artists. I absolutely love and support them. But I think we also have to appreciate something about our own. I personally feel like Grenada has the best soca artists.
Of course.
Period. And we need to support them. We need to pay them more. And I'm going to say this to our promoters. I may not get claps for it. They need to pay our local artists more. Because oftentimes, when you look at the disparity between what they pay regional artists and what they pay Grenadian artists, I mean, it is tenfold, 1,000-fold. And I think some of it is a little disrespectful to our local artists. So, and I've had to go through that same process. And I'll give an example. When I think we were looking at recruiting some of the local artists, and Orlando sent me the invoice. I was like, boss man, I'm sure we could pay all of that. And his response to me was, PL, we can't say we're supporting culture. We can't say we're supporting the creatives. And every time a Grenadian artist asks for a decent wage, you want to cut it down or beat it down. But if a regional or international artist asks for it, you don't blink, you don't even negotiate with them. So I'm saying you have to find the right balance. I'm saying this to our promoters. I think you should promote more local artists. I think you should pay them better. I have nothing with bringing the regional artists, but it is Carnival. People are going to the shows because it is Grenada's Carnival. And as I said, I'm not apologizing for this. I ain't hearing no music from any other Caribbean island when it comes to soca, whether it's groovy or poor, that is anyway close to what we have in Grenada. And so if we encourage that intensity, if we encourage that creativity in Grenada, not only will we continue to grow the business here, but I think we will actually take over the region. I don't even think Trinidad has a power soca scene anymore. Rarely. I think I had Bungie trying other things still. But basically, they're not producing poor artists. So to me, we have to encourage and support our artists because it's to our benefit. I think it's to the promoters' benefit. And I think they could hear me out on this. You don't have to pay no hotel. You don't have to pay no plane tickets. You have to deal with no expensive entourage. So when you do a local artist, you are already paying him less than you're paying the regional artist. And you don't have all of these expenses and the ego that comes with it. So to me, I think the Spice Mass Corporation might be helping them by saying perhaps you should think about promoting more local artists. You can bring regional artists, obviously, but we're trying to limit the numbers so that it becomes and remains authentically Grenadian. I appreciate that others may have a different perspective and view, and it's perhaps a dialogue that has to continue happening, but I actually think we'd be better off encouraging more and more. It's Carnival, and it's Grenada's Carnival, and it is not, in my view, something uncommon to have a situation where people may try and at least have some conditions or restrictions in terms of ensuring that it's not taken over, in a sense, by a foreign element. And I'll jump in and be controversial on one more issue, which is mass itself. We have to distinguish Grenada's mass from the rest of the region. And I don't think we can compete with bikinis and thongs and just the pretty mass. There are things that are unique to Grenada that nobody has, and that's why the jab, in my view, sold.
You have to champion your jab cards.
It was unique. But you have Veco. I mean, I don't know if you stand, if for the morning, if you see Veco and you see that energy and you see that fire, it's unreal. So to me, that is the kind of stuff. You need to be able to distinguish what makes Grenada Mass different. It's participatory. It's one of the places where you can genuinely come in at a very affordable cost and take part in the Mass. And we need to be careful that we don't price people out of the carnival and then they just become spectators, right? So I think when you have things like Jab, you have things like Veco, you have things like Shotney, those are unique things you don't see anywhere. I mean, Bahamas has Junkin, they're known for it. They don't joke around it. They bring it at the Olympic events. They bring it at their sporting events. Carifta. You see it, you know it's Bahamian. The jab, we have to make sure a similar thing happens. The shotney, the Veco, and any traditional mask. So we have to promote that. I love the pretty mask, but I'm saying we need to be careful that we don't price point people out of it, and we don't try and just become another Miami, another Trinidad, or another Brazil, because we will not be able to compete in terms of scale and pace and so on. So I just want to encourage us to embrace, I think, those things that are uniquely Grenadian, because I think we've shown that with our soca music, by staying true to who we are, the jab beat, what that means, the way we deliver, it has grown, it's become successful. People, young Grenadians gravitate towards it, and that's why you sustain it. And I think we need to do the same in terms of our masters as well. But again, I appreciate everybody has a perspective, everybody has a different view. We all need all of the stakeholders to be engaged, and I just hope from a communication point of view, because sometimes that's where the breakdown occurs, that Spice Mass is not just writing, but is actually communicating, is meeting with people, is explaining why, is taking the criticism, is listening. It's probably a start in terms of the first year, and that there should be some plan, 2-3 year plan, where we can see, okay, we can monitor it. If it doesn't work, we're happy to review it and give options. So I hope at least that the communication is taking place, and that they are sitting down and speaking with the stakeholders, and not just simply saying this is it, take it or leave it, but that the engagement is going on. So I guess you will probably say that I'm supportive of what they're trying to do.
Most of the issue is that it seems like a 99th hour sort of thing, because you don't plan for Carnival today for tomorrow. Promoters don't get up this morning and say tomorrow I'm
Very
going to do
fair
this.
point. And I would say, without compromising the situation, if a promoter can show that he contracted the artist and there are likely consequences in terms of financial, then I will certainly say that should be factored in and probably weigh in favor of the promoter. I always say
because you always have contracts.
Yeah. So I always say if you made a mistake, then you should err on the side of the person who's suffering from the mistake rather than trying to be wrong and strong. So if they did not put this out with and people feel genuinely with sufficient time, and people can demonstrate there's a risk of loss to them, then I think they should certainly err on the side of the person. And at least it would allow for flexibility and to show that we're not being dogmatic. But with a clear indication that that's the policy directive, so you know now, let's say the following year, we are likely to try and enforce it, because obviously, in a sense, we would have had a test run or a trial run this year.
Fair enough. So finally, of course, we have the CARICOM's 47th Heads of Government meeting that is set for Grenada. That, of course, is a big deal. And you will be the chair at that point in time. So speak to us on some of the things you will be looking forward to at the Heads of meeting.
Well, I think first, I'm looking forward to welcoming the heads to the most beautiful part of the Caribbean and to the most beautiful people. So as much as possible for Grenadians, in particular young Grenadians, this is historic. I mean, you've got a large grouping of CARICOM countries. We don't become the head very often. It's a rotating chairmanship that happens every 6 months. And with the sheer number of persons, I may not become the head again, even for the duration of my term. So it's a unique opportunity. It's only 6 months. But it allows me, to some extent, to become the face of CARICOM. Because as chairman, in a sense, from a PR perspective and from leading any CARICOM type initiative, as chairman, you're expected working in conjunction with the Secretariat of CARICOM, which is based in Georgetown, Guyana, to lead that. So on a regional level, there are a number of outstanding issues that we're still grappling with. Haiti, as a CARICOM member, we've played a crucial role in getting to a point where there is some transition government in Haiti. In fact, coming in here, I saw evidence of Kenyan troops landing in Haiti. We really are committed to supporting our brothers and to make sure that they get to the point of having elections, so that at least a legitimate government is elected by the people, rather than, in a sense, a situation where hand-picked persons are handed power. So that is one of the crucial things that we remain committed to. As you're aware, there's a Guyana-Venezuela border controversy. We are committed as CARICOM to supporting Guyana on this issue, but also making sure that we play a leading diplomatic role in making sure that the controversy is handled in a manner that is diplomatic, non-violent, and does not threaten the peace and safety of the Caribbean and the continent of South America. So that's another regional issue that is major. But there are a number of CARICOM initiatives, from our food security initiative, which is championed by Guyana, where we are seeking to reduce the food input bill in the Caribbean. I am going to champion digital literacy, digital skills, and ICT. Grenada is lead for ICT in CARICOM. I'm currently working on a paper to present to our colleague heads that will really seek to drive home the importance of digitization artificial intelligence and how we believe we can use it to leapfrog some of the developments in the Caribbean. So we are looking at things like artificial intelligence. We are looking at a digital strategy for healthcare, because healthcare is a major issue, not just in Grenada, but within the region. And we feel we can use technology and digitization to really begin to transform things like that, things like telemed. Cybersecurity is a big issue, because I'm not sure if you're aware, Grenada has suffered from a lot of hacking in the last 12 months. A lot of our businesses have been compromised and had to be down, from credit unions to private businesses to government services. And we need to really ramp up our cybersecurity coordination, and that's going to be critical as well. Digital skills. I gave the example of the cybersecurity training that we hope to pilot so that our citizens can get jobs. And we really believe this is key to retaining the talent, to staying here, because once you have good internet, once you have good devices, and you trained properly in digital skills, you don't need to go to North America. And really, this is the way to earn foreign exchange, because we're exporting our skills, but we're staying here. So this is something that I'm really going to be passionate about, and I'm hoping that we could do this on a CARICOM level, because the youth in Dominica is the youth in Grenada. It's the youth in St. Vincent. So that is one of the crucial areas that we would be seeking to champion in Grenada. So, it's 6 months. It tends to last pretty shortly. I'm part of what is called the Bureau within CARICOM, which is the incoming chair, the outgoing chair. So even after the 6 months, I will remain a member of the Bureau as the immediate past president. So myself, President Irfan Ali from Guyana will continue to work closely because he's the outgoing chair. And really just trying to make sure, when 2 years ago, within a week of becoming Prime Minister, I attended my first CARICOM event in Suriname. And I talked about, from an outsider's perspective, CARICOM just looks like a talk shop. We talk and we talk and we talk. So I think it's important. CARICOM is doing a lot. I think it probably short sells itself by not explaining to the citizens of the region exactly how its work impacts the citizens. And I think that's one of the things that I would probably have to take on to make sure that we explain to our citizens why CARICOM exists, what it does. Let's take the same Venezuela-Guyana dispute. It is CARICOM that got Guyana and Venezuela, not the US, not England, not China, not Russia, to sit down in St. Vincent and to say, friends, brothers, we have to talk. We have to resolve this via diplomacy, via negotiation, via the ICJ, whatever it is. But we can't have a situation where we militarize, because it will destroy all of us. And so having a regional body like CARICOM is crucial. Issues like climate change. Now, this is a major international issue, because small island development states like CARICOM, we are at the front lines of the hurricanes. We are at the front lines of the loss of our shorelines. We are at the front lines of the increase in the temperatures of the sea and the killing of our coral, the killing of our fish, right? As I've said to people, if you travel up the East Coast in St. David, all the way to Levera, there are banks, walls of sargassum, right? We're at the forefront of this. So we have to continue advocating and championing, because I say to people, our foreparents' slavery wasn't won by them saying, well, we're small, they have us on these small islands, and we'll never be free, so therefore we stop fight. They fought, right? And we have to appreciate that it is our advocacy, it was a diplomacy, it's our conviction that will get many of our partners to change their outlook and to support and be more real about the consequences of things like climate change. You have the issues of reparations. And as you're aware, Grenada recently wrote to the Bank of England, because the Bank of England was directly involved in the ownership of 2 plantations in Grenada where slavery was taking place. And the Reparations Committee, led by Dr. Alexis and Ali Gill, have been instrumental in championing this issue. We are supportive, not just from a Grenada perspective, but from a CARICOM perspective. As you know, Laura Trevelyan was here. She apologized. When I visited the UK for the coronation of the King, I met a gentleman whose family, he's married to the Governor General of New Zealand. His family owned a slave plantation in CARICOM. And as a result of that conversation, I was able to put him in contact with Ali Gill, because he recognized that even if it was token, he wanted to do something to acknowledge the role that his family played in slavery. So we have to recognize that we may be small, but as the Jamaicans say, we have to be talawa. We have to be aggressive on some of those issues. So reparations, and the whole treatment of people, to quote Ralph Gonzalez, of black bodies. The way the African continent and the diaspora have been treated is something that we have to come to terms with and talk about openly. We're not seeking retribution. We're seeking justice and affirmation that these things will not happen again. Because this is one of the key things I keep saying, that when people don't want to apologize for wrongdoing, it tells me they don't really think it was wrong, because you're hedging. You can't tell me that you think it could be conceivably moral to own another human being and to use them as a car or aeroplane. And if you don't want to openly reject those things, then it makes me have a thoughts about whether or not deep down you don't believe it was okay. And so we have to make sure that the rest of the world understands that when it comes to people that look like you and me, we will never accept the notion that anybody of a different color or ethnicity could own us. And I think this is one of the issues that we have to be very clear about and be very proud about, to recognize that our parents, foreparents, have overcome this issue. Hence the reason why I'm here and I can talk the way I'm talking. So I think CARICOM has a crucial role to play in this, and in building the partnership with the African Union and building the partnership with others who want to openly address and advocate some of those issues. Of course, there are other issues like free movement within CARICOM. A major challenge, if not an embarrassing one for us, is the issue of transportation. Right? Because our people can't move without transportation. The goods and services we need can't move. So we need to continue working on this. The political leadership, the private sector also is crucial in this. So, I mean, there's a lot to do and a lot we need to do. And I'm just happy to be given the opportunity to be leading at this point in time and to play my part in that process.
And that's an awesome way to end. But thank you so very much. But before you go, I'm going to give you the final couple minutes to. We are in the Carnival season, of course, and we're still speaking about youth violence and making sure that we have a relatively safe one. We have thousands of people coming to our shores, so we can probably use the next couple minutes to give a shout out to our youth, etc., to be on the piece of
absolutely. I think the music you were playing when I came in had me tapping my feet.
Yeah,
so it's a
really
reminder that, you know, we're about to enter July, we're about to enter the festive season, we're about to enter the creative season, the season of energy. But we want that energy to be used well. You know, I say it's like electricity. You could use it to shock people, or you could use it to create beautiful things. And we really want us to use the energy to create beautiful things. We want to say, if you have any issues with someone, there are opportunities to talk, to speak, even call your program and say, this guy annoying me in the community, what should I do? Right? So that you can get the guidance to be able to ensure that we don't use violence. We don't use disagreement as a way of trying to solve or settle anything. It does not. It just makes it worse. You know, and take it out in music. Take it out in creativity. Take it out in painting, in building a costume, in helping work in a carnival band, in volunteering to help with the Queen Show or the Panorama. You know, this is really an opportunity where there's a lot taking place, and there are a lot of opportunities. Learn how to do VECO, learn how to do shotney. You know, learn how to build the helmet for the jab. You know, learn about the charcoal as opposed to the oil and decide which one is better. So we really want to use that opportunity, I think, to encourage our young men in particular to say, look, embrace the carnival, embrace the festive spirit, don't overdo the alcohol, be safe on the roads. I think I want to re-emphasize that because we tend to have fatalities on the road around the festive seasons. Get a designated driver, use public transportation if you're gonna drink, and we really just want to come out at the end of it with you being around, you being healthy, you being alive, and having enjoyed a wonderful season. We're in our 50th year of independence. The Golden Jubilee continues, and we really want, therefore, Carnival to reflect that in keeping with the independence spirit. One journey, one people, and one fantastic future carnival.
Exactly. Well, thank you so very much, Mr. Prime Minister, for taking the time out to come to speak to us this morning. And I think we've gotten a clearer understanding on quite a number of things. And the only thing I wish government ministries would utilize the airwaves, utilize social media to speak on some of the things that are happening. Because when you don't say anything, it seems like nothing is happening.
Absolutely. It is a very fair and valid criticism, so I accept that. And I think it is one of the things we're working on. You know, all of these ministries have PROs. Maybe the word PRO is a bit outdated, you know, because really you need to have social media content. You need to be able to jump on the airwaves and let people know what's happening. And I'm frustrated with this process as well. I've always said that the government operates like a secret society. I kind of mess it up. But you need to go and tell the people what's happening. You should make it easy for the public to access your services. They shouldn't have to be trying to find out. So it's a criticism. It's a culture change that we are going to have to work on to make sure that people make use of the opportunity. The radio is here, inform people, let people know what's going on. It makes your life easier. If you can communicate clearly and directly with what has to be done so that people don't run to the MP. That's part of the problem, you see. When the government isn't communicating, then they come to the Prime Minister, or they come to the Minister. And I can't do what has to be done. In fact, coming across here, I was thinking 99.9% of the things that are required to be done has to be done by someone else. And we need to make sure that we communicate a lot better with the public, and we give the public, the media, social media practitioners, the opportunity to really learn more about what the government is doing, so that they can help us help the citizens.
Okay. Thank you so very much again, Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you.
And have an awesome day.
Thank you very much.
And that just about concludes our conversation with our Prime Minister this morning, right here on Power 95. Thank you so much to everyone who stayed with us for the entire conversation. And remember, if you missed it, you can always check out our Facebook page or YouTube page, and you'll be able to see it again in its entirety. So, have yourselves a great Wednesday, and I'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, same place on Power 95.